And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Davis, welcome you all to a special City Council meeting. I'll formally call the meeting to order. Tonight we have Tanya Daniels, City Clerk, and Chris Gauthier, Deputy Clerk, alongside Jennifer Page, who is providing meeting assistance. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councillor Vanderstelt.
Present.
Councillor Utley.
Present.
Councillor Sless.
Present.
Councillor McCreary.
Here.
Councillor Martin.
Here.
Councillor Carpenter.
Here.
Councillor Antosky.
Here.
Councillor Van Tilborg.
Here.
Councillor Wall.
Present.
Mayor Davis.
Present.
Noting Councillor Weaver is on a leave.
Please rise then if you're able, to join me in the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and justice rules. Let us also not forget those who've served our community and who are no longer with us, so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. Also like to remind council and members of the viewing public that there are a few rules that apply to virtual meetings. All members remain muted during the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for council members shall be turned on and left on so they continue to count for quorum. Staff are requested to join the video meeting should the need arise to answer questions that members of council have. Any member of council should indicate they wish to speak by pushing the raised hand button. In the event a connection service interruption occurs that affects quorum, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If that's not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All members of council participating via online video conference will vote using eScribe, and the clerk will announce the voting results. Members of the public who've registered as delegates will take part electronically via webcam or via the telephone. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw otherwise apply. So, members of council, does anyone have a pecuniary interest that they need to declare regarding the item or items appearing on tonight's agenda? If so, physically raise your hand, please. Seeing no raised hands. Before we move into the business of the meeting, I understand, Councillor Utley, you'd like to present a motion regarding the rules of procedure for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I have that brought up on the screen, please? Thank you. That moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Martin, that section 15.6.3 of chapter 15 of the City of Brantford Municipal Code be waived in order to allow for an increased presentation time for item 4.1.2 of 20 minutes, and section 15.8.6 be amended for the purposes of this meeting only to permit representatives from Brantford Energy Corporation, Sherry O'Carroll, Paul Kwasnick, and Scott Saint to answer questions during the debate portion as called upon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Any discussion or debate? Seeing no raised hands. Madam Clerk, would you please administer the vote, which I believe requires a 2/3.
Councillor Vanderstelt and Councillor Sless just awaiting your response.
Not getting in. I'm in the affirmative.
Thank you. I'll mark that.
I'm in the affirmative as well, but I'll have to reboot to see if I can get in. Okay, thank you.
Certainly, I will mark both of those. Thank you. The motion to waive the rules has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstelt, Sless, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Utley, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilborg, Mayor Davis.
Thank you. So we'll then move into presentations. I'd like to remind members of council and the presenters that there are certain rules of decorum that apply when addressing council in accordance with the city's procedural bylaw. And they are that no person shall display any sign or banner or placard in the meeting other than visual aids that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audiovisual aids and necessary in connection with the presentation to be made to council. All persons shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of language or the making of any gesture that's disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing council shall speak only on the subject on debate and shall not speak to any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. So with that, we'll move then into presentations. And the first presentation in respect to the Brantford Energy merger is 4.1.1, which is the Brantford Energy Merger Communications Strategy. And I'll call upon Sherry Ojero, who is Manager of Communications and Stakeholder Relations with Brantford Power, and Maria Vzaki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement, City of Brantford, to come forward, state their name for the viewing public, and commence presentation. As a reminder to the presenters, you'll have up to 10 minutes in total for your presentation, inclusive of questions, as the procedural rule motion does not apply to your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sherry Ojero, Manager of Communications and Stakeholder Relations for Brantford Power. Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to share the findings with you from an extensive community engagement campaign regarding the potential merger of Brantford Energy Corporation and Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus Inc. and their affiliates, including Brantford Power and Energy Plus. The theme of the campaign was Energizing Our Future. It was led by Brantford Energy Corporation with assistance from the City of Brantford. Maria Vzaki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement for the City of Brantford, will be presenting the elements of the campaign that were led by the city. The comprehensive campaign was conducted from June 24th until August 10th and included a variety of outreach methods. The purpose of the campaign was to raise awareness of the potential merger and to encourage members of the community to learn more. Wanted to ensure that all residents and businesses had an opportunity to provide feedback and also to gather input to gauge public opinion on the potential merger. Next slide, please. The campaign was conducted over 6 weeks, and it included a variety of tools and tactics with a common theme and design. The variety of methods were used to reach audiences through traditional and electronic methods. I'm going to overview for you the methods that were used. There was a dedicated energizingourfuture.ca website. That was a centralized resource that provided detailed information on the proposed merger. It also contained an online feedback form that community members could use to submit questions or comments. Responses to all questions that were submitted were posted on the Energizing Our Future website in the FAQ section, and they were responded to within 5 days. We also utilized a bill insert to all Brantford Power customers, as well as a mass email to Brantford Power customers with an email address on file. Local community advertising was utilized, the Brantford Expositor, multiple print advertisements, as well as a month-long online advertising campaign. We also utilized Brantford Power's website to contain information about the proposed merger, raise awareness, and direct individuals to Energizing Our Future website for more information. And as well, the City of Brantford created a project page on Let's Talk Brantford, and they also utilized social media in addition to social media that was utilized by Brantford Power. Next slide, please. So the result of the various methods that were used throughout the campaign were that overall, over 409,000 impressions of consistent messaging were delivered using, as I mentioned, a variety of methods. These impressions represent the number of times that the information was delivered, which does include multiple impressions per person, which was the point of the campaign. We wanted to reach people multiple times. So for example, one person could have viewed an advertisement in the Brantford Expositor. They also could have received a bill insert from Brantford Power, and perhaps they viewed some of the social media campaign that was utilized. You'll notice that the campaign impressions did result from a mix of traditional, so print, as well as electronic methods. So of the 409,000 impressions that were achieved, 496 people engaged in the campaign to ask questions or provide feedback. And the way that individuals engaged in the campaign was through a variety of methods. The quick poll that was utilized on Let's Talk Brantford was one of the methods. Questions on the energizingourfuture.ca website, comments on social media, comments on the forum on Let's Talk Brantford, as well as phone calls and emails to Brantford Power. Next slide, please. I'm going to ask Maria if she could please lead us through this slide.
Thanks, Sherry. Good evening, Mayor Davis and members of council. Maria Visaki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement for the City of Brantford. As Sherry introduced the results of the campaign engagement, she mentioned that they were the lead, but we were certainly worked very much together in collaboration. And as Sherry mentioned, we did lead the efforts on the Let's Talk Brantford portal. So we did run a quick poll. On the quick poll results, while 80 people agreed or did not have an opinion with the statement, I think a merger between Brantford Power and Energy Plus is a good idea, 268 people disagreed with the statement. A few takeaways that we want to present the committee with in the short time that we have this evening. The results of the poll, as well as comments on the forum, as well as the comments on the city's social media platforms, and some of the emails that were received, were very consistent with a pattern that we've seen on a number of engagement campaigns throughout the year, where initially there is an impulsive reaction by members of the public to disagree with something that feels new. So that certainly seeing a pattern in a number of campaigns throughout the course of this year with a strong reluctance to anything that is different or a big change. And that's something that we certainly saw monitoring all of the comments on the forum, as well as social media and in the quick poll. Another thing that we saw very clearly in analyzing the data and when the comments came in is that initially the comments were negative in the first two and a half weeks of the campaign. As information with respect to rates, which was the #1 misconception, as information about that was corrected on the forum, in our social media platforms, we saw that negativity wane off. So from that, we can gather that people assumed, without reading all of the information that was provided on the Let's Talk Brantford project page, because we did develop a very, very thorough, comprehensive FAQ where we anticipated that there would be a negative reaction and assumptions that rates would go higher without reading through the material. So when that was corrected over and over and over again in the 4th, 5th, 6th week of the campaign, we started to see a very different tone. There was very much a shift in the comments whereby they started to be more positive, more people were agreeing, and we were seeing less negativity. So those were the key takeaways from the Let's Talk Brantford campaign. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Maria. So what we identified from all of the feedback provided from the community were some key themes. And if you take a look at the themes, they actually were anticipated and really not surprising based on the complexity of the merger transaction and on the impact to the community. What is important to note is that the concerns actually stemmed from lack of information or inaccurate assumptions. And as the potential merger is a topic that does require detailed information, it's not surprising that further explanation was required. And as part of the campaign, what we were able to do is we were able to clarify information and provide further explanation. And the way we did that was through responding to questions on Energizing Our Future website. We had the dialogue on the Let's Talk Brantford. And we also had customer phone calls and emails came in through Brantford Power. And what we noticed was that once the clarifying information was provided and the concerns were addressed, the comments subsided. Next slide, please. So the key findings and the takeaways, the public response was moderate based on the extensive reach of the campaign to Brantford Power customers by Brantford Power and the City of Brantford. So again, we looked at over 409,000 impressions compared to an engagement of 496 individuals.
Sherry, can you wrap it up in the next 15 seconds, please?
Yep. Thank you very much. A majority of the negative sentiments expressed through the engagement period were based largely on inaccurate information, the tools that we utilized to clarify the concerns. Again, the number of impressions here could be a result of the people who engage perhaps have a lack of understanding of the subject matter or a lack of concern. And there is definitely some eagerness expressed by customers for more details of the transaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Thank you very much, Maria. So it just went on just slightly longer than 10 minutes. So we'll move on then to the next presentation. And that would be Scott Saint, who is the chair of the board of directors of the Brantford Energy Corporation, and Paul Kwasniak, who is the CEO of the Brantford and president of Brantford Energy Corp. So I'd call upon the two of you, please, to come forward and state your name for the viewing public and commence your presentation. And as a reminder, you have up to 20 minutes for the presentation, inclusive of any questions given the motion brought forward by Councillor Utley.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Scott Saint. I'm the chair of the board for the Brantford Energy Corporation. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. The Brantford Energy Corporation, also known as BEC, and the Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus, also known as Energy Plus, are at the final stages of exploring a potential merger of the two entities and the respective subsidiaries to create a new combined entity. And we're here today seeking the approval from the municipal shareholder. This exploration is consistent with the goals and objectives of the BEC strategic plan that was developed in 2014 and has annually been refreshed by the board and reviewed with council. BEC and Energy Plus began exploring the merger opportunity, which we are considering this today in the fall of 2019. Since that time, this merger plan was regularly presented, reviewed, refined, and updated. Feedback from this process has consistently provided endorsement for the proposed merger to move forward. Ultimately, and with further due diligence, the board of directors has unanimously approved the merger plan. The board, which is appointed by the shareholders, is comprised of electricity sector experts, local business professionals that live and work in Brantford, along with the expertise of Councillor Martin and Councillor Utley. The board was emphatic in their approval and believed that the proposed merger would create a stronger, municipally owned and locally influenced energy company, that the company be better positioned to be a strategic contributor to long-term success of Brantford. The board believes that joining together to create the 7th largest utility in Ontario, operating out of Brantford, will have the right size and capability to seize the opportunities of a changing utility landscape that will benefit the citizens, businesses, and the city of Brantford, which we'll talk about a little bit later. This is not a new idea. Ontario electric utility sector has continued the steady move towards consolidation since it restructured in 2000. Prior to restructuring, Ontario had more than 300 locally utility commissions. Today, Ontario has 55. The board believes the proposed merger provides the greatest opportunity to benefit from the growth of the entire new service territory, including the yet to be developed areas for Brantford and Brant County. Today, Brantford Power is an excellent utility that prides itself in serving customers. The board is proud of that record and the team that makes it happen. However, it is also the responsibility of the board to look beyond its legacy accomplishments and make the necessary moves to grow and position a new company to serve all of Brantford in the future. To not take up that challenge guarantees missed growth opportunity, risks stagnation over the course of time, which ultimately reduces those choices that Brantford will have in the future. Those are the key drivers the board considered during the process that has led us to this today, which is to receive the board's unanimous recommendation. In summary, the board unanimously believes that a significant ownership share of a growing utility is far superior than a single shareholder of a utility that will face limitations and risks of stagnation in the future. And now I will invite Paul Kwasnick to take us through a little more detail on the rationale and benefits. Paul, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. If you can advance the slide, please. I can start to actually articulate in a little bit more detail some of the key drivers that the board considered that Chairman Scott referred to. And so if I can just provide you with a quick overview, and then we can get down into some of the actual key benefits for the merger itself. The four key drivers that the board contemplated was really the reality that we have a common service area and interest in the geography that is Brantford and where it will expand in the future. It's noteworthy that, in the next 25 years, Brantford could see a growth from 135,000 in the surrounding area to 162 to even 182,000 people. Where will that growth come from? A large part of that growth will be inside of that newly annexed area that is Brantford and that is targeted for expansion in the future. Just to explain to people at home, the reality is Energy Plus will be responsible for serving that area of growth in the city of Brantford, which will ultimately mean some element of confusion with having two service providers. Whereas Brantford Power, on the other hand, operates within the historical city of Brantford boundaries. So a merger of these two today accomplishes two things. One is that it will eliminate the confusion in the community and deliver a unified operational efficiency from both operations inside the same area. Additionally, the board recognized that the sharing of growth of not only that area, but the other areas that are serviced by Energy Plus outside of Brant County, including Cambridge, are attractive, and that all will have a positive impact on future values. In contrast, Brantford will have limited future growth as a standalone utility due to its existing service territory, which, as I mentioned, is the historical Brantford boundary. A second key driver for the board was the value for customer and the creation of value for the shareholders, a balanced view. Neither one should be advantaged at the effect of the other. So with that, the board was encouraged by the reality that the Ontario Energy Board provides an incentive to this type of consolidation right now that results in a 10-year smoothing of rates following a merger period. Each entity, Energy Plus and Brantford Power, will continue with its existing distribution rates, subject to inflationary increases, less a productivity factor that the Ontario Energy Board would apply. So what does that mean for you at home? It means that you will end up having a rate schedule that is stable. Those are the words we've been using, and that you can predict that for a decade that you will be that those Ontario Energy Board approved rates will be linked with inflation, less a productivity factor. So that's encouraging. And then if that's not enough, after that 10-year period, the new company will be able to adopt a longer-term approach to rate harmonization, which are very close already, ensuring that competitive rate distribution are applied for our customers. And if that's not enough, there is a no harm test that the regulator applies to ensure that no single entity or customer group is harmed more than or is harmed at all at the expense of this merger. Additionally, there's a value for shareholders. The proposed merger is projected to produce additional value for the municipal shareholders and ultimately benefit the community at large. The third point that the board considered was cultural alignment. One of the risks in any merger is, can they pull it off? And can they work together? I can assure you that Energy Plus and BPI, Brantford Power, have worked together regularly in areas of common interest. We are neighbors now, and we are good neighbors. Both parties have learned that we are very culturally aligned. By example, both entities now work out of our shared facility with shared resources at 150 Savannah Oaks. That's a very innovative approach for any utility. We're also co-owners of a transformer station, which my predecessor was a part of incorporating, and that as well was a sign of innovation for our neighbors, having a shared transformer station on Powerline Road. This cultural alignment further enhances the likelihood of a successful merger. And the fourth element is a long-term community presence. It's important to the board, it's important to us, and the new company will be based in the local community for the long term and be focused on realizing growth and the opportunity for its stakeholders. That in turn could create new employment opportunities and growth unto itself. And the new shareholders, including Brantford, will continue to have a strong voice in the governance of the new company and realize those benefits to help benefit of the community at large. Because, you know, there are changes at work in our lives and we all can feel it. Those are really linked with how we use energy today. And the new company will be better able to focus on those new technologies, whether it be battery storage, research in innovative intelligent equipment, the electrification of society. Through that greater scale, the new company will be able to serve the community better. This is not disparaging to the way that we go to business now, but the reality is we look in the long term beyond this 3, 4, 5-year window, there is certainly a significant wave of change on the horizon. I can tell you more about that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. This is a visual depiction of the share ownership structure for the new company. I think it does actually illustrate that Brantford, in fact, has a major share in the new business, that being 41% of what would be the 7th largest utility with growth potential, as opposed to the full ownership of 100% of a smaller organization with pending limitations. All with the protection of minority shareholder rights, this 41% is very, very promising and strong position for a growth company and to get in on the ground floor. Next slide, please. So let's dig a little bit deeper here into what those, as to really why merging the companies. And I mentioned to you initially that for this decade following the merger, our customers will be limited to inflationary increases less a productivity factor that's approved by the OEB. And those electricity distribution rates are expected to be lower under the new co-forecast as cost-saving synergies are passed on to those customers. The proposed merger provides greater scale, would establish the new business, as I said, the 7th largest utility, and positions us to compete with larger entities in Ontario's power industry. So our current lack of scale and some financial capacity hinders our ability to be leaders here and to get out in front. And so in this opportunity that we can choose for ourselves here does provide this a door being opened to being a part of a leadership agenda. The proposed merger will create further opportunities to improve operational efficiencies, including 24/7 control room capabilities, abilities to respond to customers and inform them of what's going on inside their areas, greater resources to respond to outages. As we all know, anyone listening at home, that we can all see in the news every day that weather events and that cause disruptions are becoming more of the commonplace. Us building out the team and injecting a new element of technology into our ability to respond and help customers is a definite upside of us joining with the Energy Plus team to form a new company. We can leverage best practices and as we mentioned, eliminate that confusion of having 2 LDCs servicing Brantford. We should also be excited, and quite frankly, we should be optimistic. This is a really fantastic opportunity for Brantford to actually be the home of a locally owned growth utility operating in Brantford out of 150 Savannah Oaks. As I mentioned, there are potential for employment opportunities and obvious economic benefits. In contrast, we will continue to operate out of 150 Savannah Oaks, even if we don't merge. But I will say that the utility's ability to respond and move forward, well, the pace will be slower and the scale and the ability to respond will be reduced. The reality is Brantford Power is currently the 20th largest utility in Ontario. In the long term, Brantford Power will remain a small, maybe shrinking utility, and resources will become limited. And we've talked about this risk of stagnation and a reduce of these future options, which we have in front of us today to make choice. So we can make that decision for ourselves and carve out our own destiny because the world is changing around us. Next page. This slide depicts really the number of variables and inputs into what is our electricity sector today, whether it be generation, whether it be transmission, whether it be distribution, which is what Brantford Power's core business is, what we do at home, how we deal with energy in the future. But the reality is being the 20th largest utility is good. Being the 7th largest utility, as I mentioned, puts us in a position to be great and puts us in a position to lead as we deal with those technology and regulatory changes that are driving changes in all of our daily lives and businesses. And so we can operate through that greater scale and resources and increasing ability to be prepared. The reality is we're using electricity differently. Some are striving to use less. There will be other things in our lives that will strive us to use more. And just look at the electrification and the decarbonization priorities that society is moving towards now. Our utilities and how we go about delivering services to our communities will not only be an advantage, but it'll be a necessity for the future. And so having scale will be important. As I turn to the next page, you can see this chart on the left depicts exactly how large the new company would be. So we would be the 7th largest, as we mentioned a few times in our presentation, but you can see that we're still really at a size of 106,000 customers. This is not to say that we will not need to get bigger, but the reality is that we're not so large that we will not be able to be reached, that we will be able to be held accountable, and that you will not know who your utility provider is. So it's the best of both worlds, building up scale, building up resources, and at the same time, being able to deliver the customer service that you've come to expect. Next page, please. And so if that's not enough on the regulated side of the business, which is the distribution utility, which is Brantford Power, there's also a hidden opportunity inside of this merger that really does beef up the potential benefits in that we both are bringing Energy Plus and the Brantford Energy Corporation are bringing affiliate businesses with very interesting portfolios and that present an opportunity to replicate those portfolios inside their new service areas and maybe beyond. For example, with Brantford Hydro, this is a 100% owned subsidiary of the Brantford Energy Corporation. We have a very profitable water heater business that rents over 4,000 tanks. But on the high-tech side of the business, Net Optics services virtually every large customer in Brantford. We have relationships with those customers, and our fiber business and telecommunications business is an interesting platform upon which to growth, not only from a profitability perspective, but in that we have deep relationships with those customers. Interestingly, on the Energy Plus side of the equation, there is a non-regulated 100% owned sub of Energy Plus, and it does actually have a relatively modest streetlight maintenance business. However, what is really interesting is that that company has a 33% interest in Grand River Energy. Grand River Energy is an energy solutions company that is in the business of the very disruptive changes that we just described a minute ago, whether it be storage, generation, and to promote the use of electrified vehicles. This company already owns 4 solar generation projects in Ontario. Replicating this, combining it with the profitability and the customer relationships of Brantford Hydro is a very, very encouraging platform that not many new companies have to start on day one. Next slide. So in the interest of time, I think we've talked a lot about the customer benefits. I would tell you that, you can see that we're always going to be committed to those customer experiences through leveraging best practices. We mentioned the control room, the consistent customer experience. Both companies have an impeccable record for public health and safety standards, and eliminating that confusion between having two utilities servicing what will be a major metropolitan area within the next 20 years is a definite upside in terms of an economic development story and just transactional ease for our customers in general. Next slide. So this is my second last slide, and just to reiterate the benefit to customers in our view to achieve this rate stability, which I would also want to encourage the decision makers to consider that this incentive that is in place right now is not in perpetuity. It is subject to change. I can't say that it will change. I cannot say that it won't.
Two minutes, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reality that for a decade, to be able to look at the profile of your distribution rates for your utility and be able to count on it being inflation less a productivity factor with the oversight of the Ontario Energy Board is a very, very unique and valuable opportunity for our businesses and our homeowners as they deal with their bills. Next page, please. And so tonight, we're looking for a final authorization and approval, and we are working through the definitive legal agreements. And we will be rapidly, based on approval, working towards an application for the OEB to finalize the agreement and hopefully get that done in September of 2021. This positions us still to have this as a likelihood to have done in January 1st, 2022. We are busy at work already. In anticipation of that, there's a joint board committee that has been formed between Energy Plus and BEC, and the terms of reference and the work plan is in place for us to begin work with your approval. That's my recommendation and my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. So members, we've got about 45 seconds for any questions, and you'll be able to ask questions during the debate portion as well. So Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Paul. You mentioned growth company. You mentioned growth utility. You mentioned compete with larger entities. Leadership agenda. These are all part of your presentation, going from 20th potentially to 7th. It seems as though you're headed in a direction. Is it your contention that we could move beyond 7th in Ontario to something larger at all, or?
So I did just have a brief comment in my presentation to say that 106,000 is a good scale. It is a step forward. The possibility that to look for other like-minded opportunities or beneficial opportunities even on the non-regulated side. I think that growth is definitely a part of that, Councillor. And so I do think there's a balance here. We have really been nose down to try to put together the most compelling case for the stakeholders, digesting what we have in front of us. But I don't think it is like years and years away before we move on to looking for how we continue to grow beyond that. So I think that's a definite upside and a possibility. And I think that this is where this 41% share on the ground floor of a tremendous opportunity in an area of Ontario that is just going to explode is something that will not come again for maybe ever, certainly not in my lifetime.
Thank you, Paul.
All right, so that's it for this presentation. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, Paul. And of course, stick around. There may be some questions going your way during the debate portion. So we'll move then into delegations. And there's one delegation on the agenda tonight. And all delegations were registered to speak to this particular item. That's just one. And it's David Prang, Chamber of Commerce, Brantford Brant. So I'd ask David to please come forward to speak. Please note you have up to 10 minutes for remarks, inclusive of questions from council members.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine.
Very good. Thanks for the opportunity tonight to present on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Brantford Brant. I'm here as the CEO. Just wanted to express very briefly the Chamber's support for the merger. As has been articulated by the presentations thus far this evening. This is a very, Energy Plus has been a successful development with the merger and the acquisition of Brant County Power. That's if past performance is equivalent to or the best predictor of future performance. This has been a great opportunity so far in terms of how that entity has developed and creates a great opportunity moving forward. I understand that that merger has created regional economies of scale, both real and realized, not hypothetical, to saving about $1.2 million to ratepayers over the course of that merger so far, creating some lower distribution rates for those customers, both residential and commercial, as I understand it. I see moving forward there'll be lower and more efficient and clean technology and focus on those. I don't need to articulate that any further. I like the sizing, the lower operational costs. I think what we're seeing as some of the documents have articulated, especially, like to congratulate the use of the Energizing Our Future website and the feedback forms. That's a great opportunity for both citizens, businesses, and organizations like the Chamber to be able to engage in the feedback and the community consultation process. But seeing that, most importantly, I think from my perspective, representing the Chamber, is that Canada, or rather Brantford, has been looked over. We've made some decisions in the past that may have regionally left us a little bit behind. I think to the Canada's Technology Triangle decision made some time ago, much prior to probably many of us being engaged in politics, where I understand Brantford could have joined that group or been a part of that organization. And at that point, we chose not to do it. I think this is an opportunity, maybe not to the equivalent expectation, but the groups and the municipalities that are within the Canada's Technology Triangle, the Communitech group, and even further in terms of that 401 corridor between the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo area and Toronto, and see the growth and the amazing opportunity, economic development opportunity within that area. See this as a positive step. Similarly, in that vein, in terms of being able to create some efficiencies and some economies of scale. And certainly is much better articulated by Brantford Hydro there just before me in terms of what those reasons are. But certainly, the basis of my comments are the general support of the Chamber of Commerce, Brantford Brant, and the business community in terms of this merger, and I encourage council to support it. And a place to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. So, Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, thank you very much for your support and kind words tonight for this important decision this evening. Can you share with, I know the answer, but for the people looking in, could you share with them how important energy costs are to job creation and business growth?
Absolutely. I think it was articulated just at the end of Paul Klonzik's remarks there in terms of the predictability of a fixed cost, and having those fixed costs being able to be, drawn out over the course of 10 years. Obviously, there's a little bit of variability here and there, but certainly going into this next stage of economic development, both, particularly in our community, coming out of COVID with, the uncertainty in terms of what that looks like in terms of employers, that, the current, it's widespread that there's a shortage of employees and qualified talent for roles, but to be able to come out of COVID into an environment where there's a predictability of energy costs with a large organization that's certainly focused on cost containment, as well as efficiencies, and looking at what that new green economy, lower carbon emissions economy looks like, and being able to utilize some of those economies of scale. All those things are extremely important to business. And as we know, with both some of the work that's been done on this project, as well as this Chamber's signature advocacy policy around greater and improved and efficient transportation, both energy, the use of energy in terms of use of it for business, as well as transportation, are two huge drivers of the consumption of energy and the driver of climate change and carbon use and carbon emissions. So being able to have a larger utility that can focus on on containing carbon emissions, as well as developing unique and creative ways of addressing both low carbon transportation, as well as low carbon manufacturing and production, I think is a very positive step forward.
Thank you, David.
Next questions, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, obviously you're here on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and your members. What was the process that you used to poll your members and what was the result? I mean, obviously there was the support, but what was the process?
For this particular item, it's been more of this has been a collective discussion within our chamber group over the course of really the course of our history. But in particular for this presentation this evening, look to our chamber executive, which includes members in the development industry, the service industry, as well as the public service industry. And private industry as well. Sorry, in terms of the composition of our chamber executive, those are representative groups, elected and appointed from our chamber membership, which represents over 600 businesses in Brantford, Brant County, and 6 nations of the Grand River. Those business executives elected to and elected chamber representatives at the same time as volunteers indicated their support for the merger. Formally moving out and getting a poll, or whether it's a straw poll or official poll, in the summertime is much more difficult, and certainly with some of the other projects that we have ongoing, including tomorrow's event, was unable to do a full and formal survey of our membership for this particular item. But that's why we have elected and appointed representatives to collect and gather their information from their peers on this one.
And how many is that elected and appointed representative? What is that?
We have 12 board members, and of those we have 5 executive members, 5 volunteer executive members.
Thank you.
So not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much, David, for taking the time to come out virtually to talk to us regarding this very important issue. We very much appreciate it, and very much appreciate all the hard work and effort of the Chamber of Commerce, its board, and all its members.
Thank you. Good luck on your decision.
Thank you. So, members of council, that's it for presentations and delegations. So we have one item for consideration, and then we have one resolution. And so we'll move first to the consideration motion. I understand, Councillor Martin, you have that motion. If you would please read it, and Tom, if you could please get it up on a share screen so that members of the public can see it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move, seconded by Councillor McCurry, that Brantford Energy Corporation business case for a merger with Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus. That report 2021-570 titled Brantford Energy Corporation business case for merger with Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus be received, and B, that the Brantford Energy Task Force be disbanded, having achieved its mandate. Thank you.
So any discussion on this sort of administrative type motion? Councillor Antosky. Sorry, you're muted, Councillor Antosky.
My apologies. Is this a good place to be asking questions of our presenters, or do you just want to leave this at the received?
Well, certainly can't limit that, but I guess I'd say this is not the main event for tonight.
All
That's
right.
next
Okay,
resolution.
No problem. Thank you.
So any further debate? We're not seeing any further raised hands. Madam Clerk, would you please administer the vote on this item?
Tanya, please tell me if you received my vote or not.
Certainly, Councillor Vanderstelt through to the mayor as well. It seems that eScribe is repeating itself from Tuesday night, and that we are having some tech issues. I know they are monitoring tonight our meeting so they could see and interrupt us to fix it, but it looks like we will be transitioning to a call out of votes for the remainder of the evening. So I apologize for the inconvenience, and bear with me as we go through that process. So for item 5.11, being the Brantford Energy Corporation business case for merger with Cambridge and North Dumfries, those in favor, please raise your hand until your name is called. Councillor Vanderstelt, Councillor Sless, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, Councillor McCreary, Counselor Antosky, Counselor Carpenter, Counselor Van Tilburg, Counselor Wall, and Mayor Davis. Item 5.11 has carried.
All right, thank you very much, Tanya. So we'll now move on to resolutions, and there's one resolution on tonight's agenda. And I'd ask, I believe, Councillor Otley, you have that resolution. So if you please state your seconder, and if you would then please proceed to read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Martin. Whereas the Corporation of the City of Brantford, the city, is a sole shareholder of Brantford Energy Corporation. And whereas BEC is a sole shareholder of Brantford Power Inc., BPI. And whereas BEC and Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus are recommending amalgamation of their companies to their respective shareholders, the Holdco amalgamation, pursuant to Section 174 of the Business Corporations Act, Ontario, the OBCA, to form an amalgamated entity, merged Holdco. And whereas subsequent to the Holdco amalgamation, PEC and CNDE Plus also recommend that Brantford Power and Energy Plus amalgamate pursuant to Section 174 of the OBCA, the LDC amalgamation, and together with the Holdco amalgamation, the amalgamations to form an amalgamated entity called LDC MergeCo. And whereas in order to facilitate the amalgamations, Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus, Brantford Energy Corporation, Energy Plus, and Brantford Power, the city, the Corporation of the City of Cambridge, and the Corporation of the Township of North Dumfries would be required to enter into a merger participation agreement, the MPA, Merger Participation Agreement, and the form of a draft merger participation agreement, the draft merger participation agreement, previously present to the Council of the Municipality for review is recommended. And whereas pursuant to Section 2.1 of the Merger Participation Agreement, Brantford Energy Corporation would be required to enter into an amalgamation agreement with Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus, the Holdco amalgamation agreement. And whereas subsection 176-4 of the OBCA provides that an amalgamation agreement is adopted when the shareholders of each amalgamating corporation have approved of the amalgamation by a special resolution of the holders of the shares of each class or series entitled to vote thereon. And whereas pursuant to Section 185 of the OBCA, a holder of shares of any class or series entitled to vote on the resolution approving an amalgamation may dissent, in which case such shareholder, in addition to any other right the shareholder may have, is entitled to be paid by the corporation the fair value of the shares held by the shareholder subject to compliance with the dissent procedure contained in Section 185 of the OBCA. And whereas Brantford Energy Corporation is subject to a shareholder declaration dated February the 1st, 2000, and revised on August the 25th, 2014, requiring shareholder approval of a transaction such as the amalgamations. And whereas if the amalgamations are to take place, the city, the Corporation of the Township of North Dumfries, and the Corporation of the City of Cambridge have received recommendations to enter into a unanimous shareholder agreement governing the affairs of merged Holdco and LDC MergeCo unanimous shareholders agreement. In the form of unanimous shareholders agreement, the draft unanimous, excuse me, I was going to sneeze there. I'm sorry. I'm going to start that again. governing the affairs of merged holdco and LDC merged co, the unanimous shareholders agreement. In the form of a unanimous shareholders agreement, the draft unanimous shareholders agreement previously presented to council for review. And whereas if the amalgamations are to take place, BEFT recommends that the city enters into an amended and restated shared services and obligations agreement with LDC Merge Co., the shared services agreement, substantially in the form of an amended and restated shared services and obligations agreement, the draft shared services agreement, previously presented to council for review. Now, therefore, be it resolved that A, the amalgamations be approved. B, the terms and conditions of the merger participation agreement, the unanimous shareholders agreement, the shared services agreement, and the transactions contemplated be approved. C, Brantford Energy Corporation is authorized to enter into the holdco amalgamation agreement and to approve the LDC amalgamation. D, BPI is authorized to carry out the LDC amalgamation. E, the city is not exercising such right of dissent as provided for in section 185 of the OBCA in connection with the amalgamations and waives its right to receive notice of a meeting of shareholders pursuant to subsection 1762 of the OBCA in connection with the amalgamations. F, the city clerk be directed to place the merger participation agreement, the unanimous shareholders agreement, and the shared services agreement on the signing bylaw for execution by the mayor and clerk. G, the chief administrative officer is delegated authority to approve any minor deletions, amendments, or additions to the merger participation agreement, the unanimous shareholder agreement, and the shared services agreement attached hereto as schedules D, E, and F, as the chief administrative office and legal counsel may determine are necessary to give effect the agreement of the parties. Last one, H, the chief administrative officer is delegated authority to execute and deliver all such other agreements, amendments, instruments, certificates, and other documents as may be necessary or advisable in connection with the merger participation agreement, the unanimous shareholders agreement, the shared services agreement, and or the holdco amalgamation agreement, or to carry out the intention of the foregoing resolutions, and that the necessary bylaw to approve the merger provide the necessary authorization to Brantford Energy Corporation and Brantford Power Inc., and the delegate authority to the chief administrative officer as set out above be presented to council for approval. That was quite a mouthful.
Indeed it was. So the rather long resolution's now up for debate. And there are 2 speaking opportunities, 4 minutes each. So, and don't forget that you can ask questions of obviously our staff, but also the 3 members from Brantford Power, the chair, the chief executive officer and president, and their communications consultant. So here we go. Councillor Antosky, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Paul, please. You know, Paul, I sit on council, I'm a shareholder, but I'm also a customer. And so we're looking at hundreds of, well, probably at this point, thousands of pages of documents. And one of the biggest concerns we've said is, you know, people are really concerned about the rates. So I'd like to ask some questions about that just to make sure it's clear in my mind and maybe not in terms of others that are watching. So every so often, I think it's 5 years, there's an application to the Energy Board for rate increases. Is that correct?
Correct. There's actually an annual rate increase that's linked with inflation.
Right.
And then there's every 5 years, there is a rate rebasing, which is the industry term, when you look at the entire cost of operating the business and you seek a rate adjustment that is generally above inflation.
And so when are we due for that rate adjustment?
So I'm glad you're asking this question, Councillor Antosky, because we are frankly in front of the Ontario Energy Board as we speak, seeking a rate adjustment to be effective for January the 1st, 2022. And so, and I want to say that, again, like you just mentioned, it really is in accordance with that timetable that is approved by the Energy Board and kind of set inside of the sector, that every 5 years that you would typically apply for a full review. And the last time we were there was 2016.
Okay, so what percentage adjustment are we looking for?
So, and again, I can tell you what we applied for.
Sure.
So the active element of the rate application is subject to some level of confidentiality in terms of the relationship with the Energy Board itself. But what we've applied for and what we did our customer consultation on at the end of last year, which was comprehensive and definitely statistically valid, was to seek an adjustment of apply for an adjustment of $5.53 per month, which is approximately 5 or 6% of your total bill. And so that is what is in front of the Ontario Energy Board. That's our application. The success of that application, after the rigor that the Energy Board will put us through, is to be determined.
Right, but I presume that the work is put into it up front, hoping that, you're going to come forward with something that you think is going to be approvable. So has it been denied before? Has an application adjustment been denied in our recent past?
So full denial is no. I think the reality is as I was mentioning, it's almost a settlement, a negotiation of sorts, and that really does kind of put it under a little bit of a confidentiality bubble. But so you generally apply and then you make your case. It's really based on the detailed plans that include the capital investments that we need to make inside the community, merger or no merger, what we need to maintain our infrastructure to ensure readiness for the future. And regardless of whether we merge or not, and I think that is the salient point, it's not a shell game centered on the merger. It's a separate stream. And whether we merge or not, this increase has been applied for, and we're seeking that level of adjustment. So we're expecting to come back with something, yes, and so we'll see.
So let's go on that line of thought, because I'm going to run out of time. So without the adjustment right now, we're looking at a rate adjustment right now. It's been applied for somewhere in between 5 to 6%. Plus, each year, the next 5 years, there's also going to be a rate of inflation adjustment, correct?
And then this is, yes, you're correct. And then the opportunity for us is that in 2027, which would be our next rate rebasing,
right,
we don't do that. And then if you even look.
If we go through with the merge, okay, but let's stick with if we don't. So if we don't, then in another 5 years, even if we just went with the 5.5 to 6%, we'd be hitting that again. Okay, so
Councillor Antosky, hit your 4 minutes.
All right, okay, I'll go back on the list. Thank you.
Okay. Next, Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, and one goes back with what Councillor Antosky just asked. Paul, the 5% or 6% that you said that you've applied for, is that amortized over the 5-year period that this base rate is set, or is that each year of those 5 years?
No, it's not a 5-year 5% increase every year. It's a one-time adjustment on your total bill.
Right.
Of approximately $5.53.
Based over 5 years.
It would come into effect on January 1st, Councillor.
Yes.
That adjustment, and
yes.
then in 23 there would be an inflationary increase, 24, 25, 26, and then we would.
Right, but the base would not change after that initial thing in those 5 years.
Correct. That would be built in.
Okay. The other quick question I have is, I think you called it productivity discount. you said that the rates would, if the merger went through, there
Yes.
would be a productivity discount onto the rate of inflation increase.
I'm glad you're asking me that as well, in that, because when people hear, oh, the rate of inflation, I mean, there's a little bit of a moving target, but the Ontario Energy Board, applies an expectation of us to not only operate within inflation in between rate rebasings, but to also operate with a little bit less. So they will actually apply an expectation that you will have a reduction, that so your increases will actually be less than inflation based on that Z factor is what they call it, but it's a productivity factor that they say, we expect you to get better every year. And we'd have to find that on our own, which is very difficult in challenging in a smaller, mid-sized utility like ours, faced with the realities of industry change that I just described in my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Mr. Mayor, I would hate to be a resident watching this program, because we have the benefit of a couple hours this afternoon of presentations and prompting from experts in this field, from accountants to people who put deals together, to lawyers, to all that takes place to create a merger. And now in about an hour, you're going to, as a resident, be expected to digest all this without the benefit of everything that we've been told. And it's hard enough to digest. In fact, it gives you a stomach ache trying to digest everything that's been crammed into us in a very short period of time. There's a lot of information and a lot of detail been provided by very qualified experts in each of the fields that we've been briefed on and that's been explained to us. And even then, it's extremely difficult to get your head around everything that's going on. I think at the end of the day, what all these experts are saying in real simple terms is, financially, the city is way better off owning a smaller piece of a very large company as opposed to owning the entirety of a small company. And I think it was in the tens of millions of dollars within 10 years of difference between doing something now or not doing something now. The case in dollars is overwhelmingly positive by moving forward with a merger. So, but I get why people would scratch their heads. I think I've heard 14 acronyms used tonight. Half of them, I'm not sure if I know what they are. I know the public doesn't know what they are, but they're used in this industry, so they're being used this evening. But the fellow that's sitting, in his chair down on Alexander Drive watching this movie is going, I don't know, it sounds to me like they're putting it to us. That's not the case at all. We're actually looking out for the folks that use hydro, and that's everybody in this city. When we're talking about the rapidly changing face of the electrical industry.
Councillor Sluss, can you wrap it up?
Sure. I will on my second speaking tour. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Next, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the big issues for me is if we don't go forward with this merger, 4 out of 5 wards will have 2-tier residents. You'll have residents that are served by Brantford Power, and you'll have residents that are serviced by Energy Plus. And if one of your residents has an issue with a transformer in their yard or some kind of an issue with hydro, you're going to have to ask them where they live first to figure out which one of the 2 tiers they are. And that's a very concerning thing for me. If we go forward with this merger, they will all be serviced by the new company that we will have more say in than if we don't merge and they're serviced by Energy Plus. And if this doesn't go forward, we might have some animosity from Energy Plus, which would make that situation even worse, which I hope wouldn't be the case, but we'll see. Another thing that really hasn't been talked about much, it was touched on that this is something where this is a deal of our making. It's something that we've worked on very hard and put together. It's been mentioned that the province is encouraging amalgamations of distribution companies. It may get to a point where they say, okay, the carrot isn't working good enough. We're going to pull out the stick and we're going to force some mergers. If we don't do this deal, we're going to be a smaller company and we're going to be coming under that stick, and we might be forced to merge with someone we don't like, in an area we don't like, under terms we don't like. But this was a chance for us to negotiate a good deal for ourselves, for our customers, and for the new company. And I hope that members of council can support this tonight. Thank you.
Next up, in terms of first speaking opportunities, Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. Okay, so I'm Joshua. I'm councillor for Ward 5. It's one of two for Eagle Place East Ward and downtown. And this is a big decision. And I think that Councillor Celeste made some really great comments that if I was somebody who was sitting at home today and I was watching this council meeting, if I was going to read the headline that's going to inevitably appear in the media over the next couple of days, I might not have any idea what's going on. And yeah, I've been present at every one of the meetings, and I have had people talk at me for hours and hours and hours. And to say that I completely understand it, I mean, that wouldn't be fair. Do I get it? Absolutely. Do I have faith in the people who are telling us that this is a good idea? That's what I have to keep asking myself. What is my role as an elected official? Is it to come in here and pretend like I know it all and I have all the answers and I'm an expert in all things to everyone? I know that that's not the case. I rely on expert advice from individuals who have significantly more experience than me. And my responsibility, I feel, is to gauge the opinions of the people that I represent and make a decision based on that. And I haven't had a lot of feedback from the people I represent on this decision. And I can't help but wonder why. Do they not care? I don't think that's true. I think they care a great deal. Do they not understand it? I can wager a bet that maybe many people don't. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the biggest concern is this going to cost more? Are we going to lose quality of service? Is our life going to be worse for it? And everything I'm hearing is not the case. But I guess I have a question, and my first question is for our staff. And then my next question is for Paul, if you don't mind, because I want to provide some transparency here. So first, what is this board that's providing us a recommendation? And that's a question for staff. What is that board and who gave them the authority to even make this recommendation? And then my second question is for Paul. Could you just do this audience a solid and as much time as you'll be given to explain to me who this board is and what gives them the qualifications to make this recommendation? And those are my two questions for now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Brian Hutchings, CEO. The board was appointed by council. Their board, they're also then sit as a board that's under the Ontario Business Corporations Act. They're all members and usually with professional business experience, and they oversee the BEC group of companies.
Just a little bit more, Brian. Why does that board exist? Like, how come that's not just something council does? Why do we have to have a citizen elected board chosen by council? Is that just best practice, or?
It's a common practice with every municipality. That's the people are appointed. So again, the municipality is appointed under different legislation, provincial legislation with under the Municipal Act. This is in the Business Corporations Act, and we appoint business people, business professionals, and two counselors who represent council on that and oversee that on behalf of council. But the business expertise is needed to run that business, to maximize dividends, and also to provide good service to customers, the 41,000 customers in the city of Brantford.
Thanks, Brian. And Paul, I don't know how much time I've got left, but could you tell me a little bit of, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, there's time. And I think you had the same question for Paul. So Paul.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, as much detail as you're willing to provide.
Yeah, so I can actually relay that. I think that, anyone listening at home and for yourselves, that the board of directors that the Brantford Energy Corporation and its affiliates, Brantford Hydro and Brantford Power, have really been privileged to have a group of individuals that draw on deep electricity sector experience and also a local business perspective. They live and reside, not all of them, but a large number of them live and reside in Brantford. And their dedication of time and expertise is, quite frankly, over and above in executing this strategic plan, which has been in place for many years, right? To seek out collaboration or merger. And I would say that they have been steadfast in carrying out their fiduciary responsibilities, which is a unique element of a board of directors for an OBCA company, and that they have to make the right decisions in the interest of the business and with an idea to provide value to the shareholder. And so balancing off all of that. So I would say, if you look at it's built up of 10 individuals, and again, a very interesting cross section of expertise and experience that should in fact inspire that trust you spoke of, Councillor Wall, which is really what you have to, I think, in the complexity of all of this, which is the only high ground that we can take, is to say that in fact you've got people that have reviewed this and dealt with it for years and years, and it should give you some comfort.
Okay, so we'll have to leave it at that, Councillor Wall, for your 4 minutes. So next on the first go round, Councillor Vanderstelt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Paul, for the viewership at home. I think 41 of them and 26 in the room. If you can try to keep it concise, Paul, just give it a shot. I haven't heard any red flags. I haven't heard any major convincing arguments why we should not do this from informed people to an informed council. Can you please bullet point the good news story that this is?
Absolutely. I'd say that your challenge to be concise is one of my weaknesses, Councillor Vanderstelt. But I would say that, to the benefit of customers, a long-term perspective in terms of service and rates, the value for the shareholder that it will create, the ability to respond and provide services that this community will need to have to remain competitive and from an innovative perspective, and also to keep things local, accessible, and accountable. I think that those are 4 off the top of my head. There's others, but those would be if someone asked me tomorrow morning, what's in it for us? I'd say customers win, shareholder wins, and I think the long-term future of Brantford wins as it grows into that 165,000, 185,000 population for the area.
And the financial benefits, we can, from what I understand from what you presented today in camera and here, there is no lose. It's a win all the way through.
So I would characterize, Councillor Vanderstelt, that it's definitely upside and a higher degree of certainty that the financial benefits will continue to accrue for the shareholder and be actually more than what you would have got in the future, and especially the value of the company as the space changes. The value of this new company that you're going to build tonight, should you approve it, will be substantial for some future council to consider.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hutchings. Could you please describe for me the 3 properties story: Savannah Oaks, Epi Street, Grand River Avenues. There are some added benefits coming from a sale of a portion of the property at Savannah Oaks, benefits coming from the Epi Street property and from Grand River. Could you please describe those for our still 41 listening public viewers here?
Let me start with the middle, if I can, through you, Mr. Chair. MP Street, that will be, went to council last month and was approved. It'll be for a pumping station expansion to that important area of the city. We need to expand the pumping station there. So that will be an asset that the city will exchange value for Brantford Power will be providing that to the city, and we'll be purchasing that. The other one is Savannah Oaks. There's a piece of property that's in Mr. Kwasnick's business case when he took over that property. There's about 20 acres there, 25 acres, I believe, that will be severed off and be sold. That is a matter of the business of the Brantford Energy Corporation. But part of that severing off, there's a pond of some significant interest that will also be part of a condition of sale that will be provided to the city at nominal value. So that will be there as well, and that will provide a dividend, hopefully a dividend to the city. And last but certainly not least is the Grand River. Mr. Kwasnick's operations, BC operations, have centralized the Savannah Oaks. It's less space at Grand River, which we are moving parks in, which will save approximately $400,000 in renovations down on 1 Sherwood, and it'll also then allow, when Parks moves in eventually to Earl Avenue with operations, It'll allow space for our transit to expand, and it will also be an opportunity where we won't have to invest in that building. We'll have another transit bay, and it'll save us some monies in that in the future as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. It sounds like
That's
a
it.
shocking thing, but it works. Thank you.
All right, on to the next first speaker, and that would be Councillor Van Tilburg.
You know, it's been a long time since hydro used to be PUC, and so a lot of the public are still out there with that mindset. And that was some 20 odd years ago. What's happening now is that I think the best that we brought for the community, that there is no golden ticket for consumers. What you have is a chance for status quo, maintaining the status quo and long-term stability. There is no big gain. But what I do see here, and I've been watching over the years, is that nobody rushed out to make a quick deal or a fast deal with anybody that was out there. I believe that the best deal possible has been presented to us. This is probably the best position of strength that we can be in, but that isn't for our consumers. That is for the shareholders and for the company itself. And if you think about the ongoing future and how hydro is, and it does have to get bigger, status quo could put the company currently in a worse position in the long run than looking at what this change provides. A lot of hard work has gone into this. And like I said, there will benefits are mostly to the shareholder and probably for the strength of the company versus the consumer. Because if you look at it either way, it's all done through going to having your rates brought forth to that committee where they choose to add in the 5% that was going to be added on. That would happen with or without the merger. So what I hear here is 10 years of stability, which I guess is interest rate into the rate of inflation as the increase going on. That would likely happen if we didn't change. So, you know, consumers, not a lot here for you, but it is better that we have a stronger company in the long run. I look at also what Councillor Martin alluded to, is that when we did the boundary transfer, that two-tiered service, two-tiered rates, two-tiered a lot of things. We're bigger, we're growing, and I think this is the best way to grow as both a community and serving the community as a greater whole. So I don't come from a mindset of this style of regulated hydro. I come from I believe in the past of when we had PUCs and low consistent rates for everyone. That's long gone, and you can't put that toothpaste back into the tube. This is what we have to deal with. Like I said, I was fearful in my first term when I first saw the negotiations going through and through different parties, wondering what is the ultimate goal. And when I see this and I see the local players involved, what they want to achieve, they have the best interests of everyone in mind. I am fully convinced by what I've heard and what I have seen. I might have been a doubter on the outside in the past on these kind of activities, but I've watched this, and I'm quite confident in what I've been told and why I believe that we're going down this path. I think it is sound business for everyone. I do wish there was a way that these could be passed on to consumer, but I think what it is that if you look at risk in the future, there could be a potential of it being worse for the consumer if we don't grow, if we don't get into a bigger entity. So that's how I'm looking at this. I see it as a benefit to the community, a benefit to the shareholders, a benefit to revenues coming in. The city is the shareholder, so that works to our advantage. But yeah, I just gotta leave it at that. I'm supporting what I have seen, and I think it is for the good of the community.
Exactly 4 minutes, Councillor Van Tilburg. Any other first-time speakers before I go on to second time? Oh, sorry, Councillor Riley. Go ahead. Your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I'm small and hard to see at times. Comments are allowed right now, right?
Absolutely, we're in the debate. Comments, questions, whatever you like.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to share with council and the public looking in how long and complex the negotiations were. I think around 18 months to 2 years. And it really was incredibly complex and at times very frustrating as we were getting towards the end of negotiations and each side fine tuning and trying to get the best deal they possibly could for their shareholders, which is, you know, we all did a great job of doing that, I believe. But in the end, we arrived, you know, at a compromise in many cases. And we believe what we arrived at is a very good deal for our communities. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a good deal. And time will prove that to be right over the next 10 years. There are a lot of outstanding people involved in the negotiations, both internally and externally. And the first I'd like to thank is BEC Chair Scott Saint and Brantford Hydro Chair Craig Mann, Peter Vicano, Terry Smith, Neil Sanford, Ron Stewart, Jerry Smith, Andy Woodburn, Councillor Martin and myself. These are hugely talented people that gave it their all. And many of them went way over and above the board of expectations in providing advice and doing research for us. I also have to mention, you know, CEO Paul Kwasnick, Brian Dunbar, Sherry Ojero, just and all the other support people that were involved. Our own CEO Hutchings, Kim Jolie, Heidi DeVry until she got her promotion, and Joel Daniels. You know, so many people played an important part of getting us to where we are. How am I doing for time?
You still have another minute and a half.
Okay, thank you. This has been exciting. There's been some sleepless nights going through this process, but I really want to assure the viewing public that this is as thorough and detailed a job as we possibly could achieve. It doesn't mean to say that the OEB, Ontario Energy Board, are going to approve. They may fine tune it a little bit more. So we've got a little ways to go yet. I think around 18 months, 2 years before this merger is finally approved. But this is the most important step in the process, is making the decision to merge. And I hope that we get behind this. If you don't, I can understand your reasons why, and life will move on. So I'll end it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to rant a little bit.
Nope. So any other first-time speakers? I see Councillor Antosky, Councillor Wall would like to speak to it a second time, but before I go to them, I'll say one last time. Okay, Councillor Antosky, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. This might be just a confirmation I'll be looking for from Paul. Now I'm going to start with my second question, and then if I run out of time, I'll go back to the first one, because CAO Hutchings has already alluded to this. So, Paul, an item that's near and dear to my heart is environmental issues and that pond, and we just heard CAO Hutchings talk about it a little bit, and you know that there's been discussions from citizen members, and there's a real appetite to find a way to to keep that pond for environmental reasons. There's some habitats there. There's an opportunity there to plant a lot of trees, and part of the presentation, even from in terms of the merger being a good way to go, is innovation and green energy and carbon reductions, and this pond, if we're able to keep it intact as it is and build some trees, I think serves both the city and Brantford Power in terms of looking at something that's beneficial to our community. So I heard CAO Hutchings mentioned that it sounds like we've come up with a solution, because I think that the pond would be a detriment for, or not a detriment, but maybe a liability for a developer, because you can't develop on it. And it sounds like we've worked something into the condition of sale that it would come back to the city for a nominal fee. Could you just confirm that I've got that correct?
Yes, you do, Counselor. We would be looking at, as a part of the sales process, incorporating into the terms and conditions that there'd be a requirement to deal with the city at a nominal fee, like you mentioned, and determine the future of the pond.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And with my remaining time, we did establish, when we were talking about rates, we established that if regardless of whether or not this gets approved tonight, right now there's an application in place for an adjusted rate, I think it was called. And then if that were to be approved, we would have that, and then we'd have the adjusted inflation rate for 5 years, and then we could apply, you would apply again if we did not merge. But if we do merge, that second application for the adjusted rate goes away. And we've still got 5 years of only adjusted inflation rate.
Correct. You've got that right. And I'm glad that you're clarifying that, because that is a bit of the magic sauce, if there is such a thing in all this, that needs some clarification for customers. And the benefit is the avoidance, the guaranteed avoidance of that 2027 rate adjustment for sure, which extends the whole stability promise over the course of 10 years.
Thank you, Paul. As a customer and as a counselor, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. It's Councillor Well.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Okay, my questions just continue on the same theme I was on in my first speaking opportunity. Paul, you had mentioned there was 10 members of the board?
Correct.
And this was a unanimous approved support from the board?
Regularly on throughout the process, the board has been emphatic in their support, and as recently as this week, they unanimously passed on this recommendation to you for consideration.
So what happens to the board if this gets approved?
So that's an interesting development, in that the board, in its way, in doing the right thing, there'll be elements of the board which that board will be dissolved upon when the merger becomes effective, hopefully as soon as January the 1st, 2022.
So because I have limited time, Paul.
Oh,
how
I'm
many
sorry.
members? I'm sorry. There's 10 now. How many will there be from this board on the new board, presumably?
You'd be looking at least 2. Craig Mann and Scott Saint would be on that new board.
What happens to the other 8? They're just out of a job?
They could find themselves in a selection process for the future, for the board in the future, and that. So in fact, they've made a decision that disbands themselves.
So that's what I was going to say. So I don't want to make any assumptions or presumptions or whatever, but essentially by making this decision, they're done.
I think it speaks to the nobility of their perspective.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was an easy decision to make. And then my final question, and again, it's just based on transparency. I saw a lot about Ontario, but I'm just kind of wondering, what are the best practices in this kind of stuff, countrywide? What are other provinces and other major large urban municipalities that are leading the way in energy, whatever? How do we align with that, or how are we swimming against the current with that? Like, could you tell me, like, what's Edmonton do hypothetically, or somewhere like Saskatoon?
In the case of Alberta, very much ahead of the curve and proactive in having integrated utilities that are very much run, larger entities that are vertically integrated, that have best practice board of directors, and that serve Edmonton and Calgary. In both those instances, are actually a step ahead of where we're going. It is still a mixed bag in Canada, but the fact that Ontario was certainly an anomaly in having 300 and then moving down to 55, and I don't know what the end result of all that is. We would be more aligned with the way that I would say North America on the whole is is constructed than the contrary. We would not be outliers for sure.
All right, it looks like I'm gonna run out of time, so if this decision does go the way that I think it's going to, I want to say thank you for, one, answering my questions. They're very important to me. And also thank you to every member of the board who provided their advice and information regarding this decision making. And you did a great job on the presentation. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate your comments.
All right, looking at the raised hands, Councillor Utley, you're next. Second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I want just recap some key benefits from the merger. One is that a merger will become the 7th largest in Ontario, and I think that's pretty significant. Right now, we have around 106,000 customers between us. Imagine the growth in the next 10 years in Brantford, Brant County, Cambridge, and Northampton. It's going to be hugely significant. We need to be a part of that. The other thing, if we stay on our own, the growth lands will come under the jurisdiction of Energy Plus, not the new merge code. And I think that would pretty much stunt any meaningful future growth in our city. We'll enjoy rate stability for 10 years. I think that's a big benefit for residents as well as businesses that want to locate here. Shared ownership of 41% of the 7th largest utility with protection of minority shareholder rights. We'll have no less than 40% employees in the entity in Brantford. Improved customer services. We'll have increased dividends of approximately $1 million a year once we get into 100% synergy. The value of the asset itself will probably double over that 10 years, which is again significant. I hope we all get behind this and do what's best for our community. Thank you.
So that's the end of speakers. If you want to speak, you better pony up and raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to call the vote. Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you very much. Well, I have to reiterate what was said by a number of people with respect to the volume of work that's gone into this proposition before us today. And Mayor, I want to thank you for twisting my arm to sit on the committee that brought this to council. It certainly was a great learning opportunity. And thank you to Councillors Utley and Martin for putting up with me. They certainly are far more well-versed in these issues than I am. However, I should say tonight that I'm perhaps going to be the dissenting vote on this council. And it's not because I don't think there is value to this proposition, and I don't think it's I think probably what's been said likely is going to be true, that it's a great opportunity for us. But I can't help but think that you know, we're golding the lily to some extent. Many of the advantages that were talked about, not just today, but in prior sessions, they also exist with the status quo operation. We've got a pretty good operation. We provide pretty good service, and councillors have the opportunity to interact with Mr. Kwasnik specifically, who's always, I don't think the man takes holidays. He always responds to me in about 10 minutes at the most. I don't know that maintains itself, that ability maintains itself once we become part of a larger organization. We are a minority partner, and in time, I think there may be some decisions made that are, you know, maybe not in the best interest of this community. I think, you know, as the minority partner, we may suffer some job losses. I know there's some mitigating factors that go into all this. And I think we haven't really examined all the other options which we could be looking at with respect to the future of this asset. Anyway, so those are just some of my comments. As I said, I think probably there is value in proceeding with this. But I think there's also value in some degree of caution. And as I said, I'll likely be the dissenting vote, but I just wanted to make sure that my comments were heard tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor McCurry. Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the staff, all the information that members of the committee and council have received on this merger proposal, when will that information be able to be released to the public so the public can understand all the information that we've had before us to make this decision?
Well, you have the council, you have the documents in front of you as part of this report that's available to the public. All the attachments that were available on the report that was received.
They're all available for the public. The same reports we've had.
Yes, the ones in open session. Yes, they're available for the public. They're online now.
Now, some of the reports were in camera because it was important to be in camera for that discussion. When will those ever be able to be released to the public?
I don't think they'll, at this point in time, they wouldn't be released to the public. They deal with sensitive matters in the Ontario Business Corporations Act with value of the asset and future cash flows and dividend flows, which are basically those of the corporation, which is a private corporation.
That would include the PowerPoints?
I missed that last, excuse me.
Would that include the PowerPoints?
Yes, that's the part of the attachments, yes. The open session attachments are PowerPoints are available to the public. They're online, yes.
Thanks for the clarification. I think the silver lining in this, if there is one, is I'm glad I raised I was very concerned from the very beginning. I was concerned about the value of the asset. Are we getting the true value of the asset as part of a merger? What are our ratepayers who own the asset? We as council members do not own this asset. It's the ratepayers who own this asset. And since the very beginning, since Mike Harris introduced the white paper that dissolved Public Utilities Commission and made all your hydro rates taxable so that province could receive tax revenue and your rates went up. And then the utility businesses court have been disarray for some time, trying to work on the private sector. The silver lining, of course, here is that this merger would be wholly owned by municipalities. I think that's a plus, as opposed to being owned by the private sector. And what the private sector may or may not do with it would be more concerned with profit as opposed to quality, safe distribution of electricity. So I just want to add those points. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. I see Councilor Sless. Guess I'd like to say a few words. I'll set my timer for myself. Ready, set, go.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
You're still
What's
on
that?
mute.
We can't hear you.
Failure of the space bar technique. It always fails me in my moment of greatest need. I'd say this in terms of the public. I understand it can be a bit frustrating because we've been given a lot of detailed financial information that's allowed us to, look at what the merits are of this proceeding, both in terms of those that are customers, in terms of the city itself, the greater city as being, we all own it, and what the future is and what that looks like in terms of the value of our interest in this business. And I say we, I mean the greater we. And so, but unfortunately, the best expert advice we got was that it would seriously compromise and jeopardize the value and the integrity of our corporation to do it. Because it is a private corporation, it operates in a competitive marketplace, and the last thing we want to do is jeopardize our own corporation that's frankly worth a lot of money. So, but I've heard from previous councillors as to what the merits are of that argument, and I think that this has been a 2-year process. These numbers have been looked at up, down, sideways, around 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and I feel pretty confident that the numbers we've been given and the reasons for doing this, I have no doubt that they're reasonably accurate as they can be, and clearly will benefit the ratepayers. They'll have great stability over 10 years, not have that rate rebase in 5 years. The value of the business that we have, albeit it'll be a smaller interest, but in a bigger business, it'll be worth a lot more than what it will be as a standalone. But some of the more convincing arguments haven't even been mentioned to my mind. And one is this innovation argument. I'll give an example. I was at a business, visiting a business. They want to expand their business here in Brantford. They got a lot of confidence in our community. One drawback was they're building a new section of their plant. They wanted to create solar panels so they could generate some electricity, some of the electricity they use. So that's called smart grid. They use some of the electricity they generate from wind or solar, but of course they'd still draw from the power system. And I checked with Brantford Power, but unfortunately in that area of the city, it's not possible because of the grid in that system, our electric grid, to do what's called the smart two-way provision of electricity to that business. And I asked Paul, if we were part of this larger corporation, would there be a greater likelihood because of the scale, more resources, that would be resolved in the future? And the short answer was yes. And so when they talk about innovation, that's what they're talking about. That's the kind of innovation that we could see that would benefit businesses. The other argument in this is, we're a very strong community, but like any other community, we always look for partnerships and other communities to do things together. In the past, it's very much been handled, but we had this huge growth area north of us. I think it's going to guarantee our future. It'll be more important to our future to develop linkages. We already have them post-secondary education with Laurier and Conestoga. The resolution respect Oak Park Road is not that we dealt with earlier this year. It's not just developing a regional transportation system between us and the county, but it's between starting in Simcoe right up to Kitchener to improve that north-south transportation linkage. We know we sit on the Grand River watershed. Councillor Carpenter and I sit on the GRCA. We know how important that relationship is with our upstream neighbors. And this will be another way in which to solidify our relationship with that area, the Kitchener-Waterloo corridor, which frankly, if you think about it, is probably going to be one of the greatest growth areas in our province. And this will help us. I think it'll help secure our future, better economic future, not just because of the electrical grid system, but because we'll be strengthening our relationship with that growth area of our provincial economy and the national economy. So I hit 4 minutes. That's it. Anyone else? I've lost the participants box in my.
Mayor, I think Councillor Slash had his hand up.
Yeah, Councillor
I'm
Slash.
good, thanks. I'm good, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Technical problems here. It's a new city hall. I'm not seeing any other raised hands, seeing them. So Madam Clerk, would you administer the vote?
Certainly, through to the mayor. Would like to try one more attempt at e-scribe voting. They are monitoring our meeting, so we're going to share the decision now, which is item 6.11, being Brantford Energy Corporation potential merger with Cambridge and North Dumfries Energy Plus. And fingers crossed, it communicates to iPads.
Mine still shows the old one.
Yeah, mine shows the new one. Maybe because I'm here at New City Hall.
Mine registered the new one.
I'm 511.
Thank you, councillors, for your comments. That we will now just proceed with a call out to votes, as it is not registering equally across all members. Thank you for that, for your patience with that. 6.11. Those in favor, please raise your hand until your name is called. Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Sless, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Van Tilborg, Councillor Wall, and Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor McCreary and Councillor Carpenter. Item 6.11 has carried.
All right, so we'll move on then to item 7, notices of motion. There are no notices of motion for tonight's meeting, so we'll now move into bylaws. And Councillor Vanderstelt, I believe you will have the motion for first and second reading of the required bylaws to confirm tonight's decisions.
I am Mr. Mayor. I'm the mover. Councillor Utley is a seconder. That lead be given to the mover and seconder to introduce the following bylaws for first and second reading. Bylaw 178 2021 bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this council of the corporation of the city of Brantford with respect. Period. That's all I got here. Sorry.
Through the mayor, if
It's
I
up.
could.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's up in the screen.
Yeah. Okay. I got a glitch here myself. Okay. One, merger participation agreement between the corporation of the city of Brantford, the corporation of the city of Cambridge, the township of North Dumfries, Brantford Energy Corporation, Cambridge and North Dumfries Energy Plus Incorporated, Brantford Power Incorporated, Energy Plus Incorporated, Cambridge and North Dumfries Energy Solutions Incorporated, and Brantford Hydro Inc. Special City Council, August 30th, 2021. 2, unanimous shareholders agreements between the corporation of the city of Brantford, the corporation of the city of Cambridge, the township of North Dumfries, Merge Co-Holding Corp, and LDC Amalco Special City Council, August 30th, 2021. Amended and restated shared services agreement between the corporation of the city of Brantford and LDC Amalco Special City Council, August 30, 2021. And 179, 2021, a bylaw to approve the amalgamation of Brantford Energy Corp and Cambridge North Dumfries Energy Plus, to approve the amalgamation of Brantford Power Incorporated and Energy Plus, and to delegate authority in relation to the amalgamation. Special City Council, August 30, 2021. Let's slide down there, Tanya. We can Okay, where am I? Sorry, my apologies.
I think you're at 180.
Yes. 180, 2021 bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the city of Brantford with respect to the special meeting held on August 30th, 2021.
Right, and who is your seconder?
Councillor Utley was a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vanderstelt. So does anybody wish the items separated for first and second reading? If you could physically raise your hand, because my participants box is not working. I can't see electronically raised hands. So not seeing any raised hands. Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on first and second reading?
Certainly. First and second reading of bylaws. Those in favor, please. Councillor Vanderstelt, Councillor Sless, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Van Tilborg, Councillor Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor McCurry, and Councillor Carpenter. First and second reading of bylaws have carried.
All right, so we'll move then into third reading. And Councillor Antosky, I believe you've got that motion.
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. Moved by myself. I'm looking for a seconder, please.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you. That bylaw 178-2021 be taken through to and including bylaw 180-2021 as read a third time, be finally passed and signed by the mayor and clerk.
All right, does anybody wish the bylaws separated for discussion purposes for third reading? Seeing no physically raised hands. Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Certainly. Third reading for all bylaws, starting with those in favor, please. Councillor Vanderstelt, Councillor Sless, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Van Tilborg, Councillor Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Counselor McCurry, and Counselor Carpenter. Third bylaw reading has carried.
All right, thank you very much, Tanya. That concludes our business for this evening, and the meeting is now adjourned.